Oh, I know. I'm gonna edit that out later. Okay, we're back again. I hope.
I don't know how I'm going to put this on a Oh, I'll
Yeah,
figure it
because it's
out.
gonna be like 8 different streams, and now you get to splice them together or something.
I don't know if I can even do that.
I
Also,
think.
you have not changed your still says you're speaking at MSU.
Oh, I didn't set. I guess you set that probably on Twitch. So I didn't. Yeah. Oh well.
Oh.
I suck
Oh,
at
oh
streaming,
it's
guys. I'm
my
sorry. I
fault.
have too many
It's
things
my
to do.
fault. Okay, well, I'll keep this in
Oh,
mind.
so what were we talking about? What was the name of the game again? Since I
Codename
derailed us.
Theme
Okay.
is the name of the game. Yeah, I've really been out of the JRPG loop. The last RPG I played was Inquisition, Dragon Age Inquisition.
I just feel like I'm a little bit more out of the loop in the last couple of years because instead of going to E3 as a journalist, I've been actually exhibiting, and that used to be like my big like push into getting all of the information I really wanted for the year. Now I now I end up having to soak it up from all sorts of news sites, which is cool, but it's a different experience.
Yeah.
I've definitely played more different types of games since starting the YouTube channel and streaming.
And I mean, going through my backlog, I've definitely started playing a lot of different kinds of games. I mean, prior to the DS coming out, I basically played RPGs to the exclusion of everything else. I played
Yep.
very little.
Me
And
too.
then the DS came out, and there were so few. I loved the system, but there were so few games for it, and there were no RPGs. And so I ended up playing all of these different kind of games that I never would have played otherwise.
Pokemon's an
Um,
RPG. Pause.
Sure.
Definitely, absolutely is an RPG.
Uh,
How is it not an RPG?
Oh no! Don't argue, please.
Oh no, no, no.
I don't want to have this conversation. Baker, bail me out.
We'll talk about this later. Pause.
Yes.
Okay, how about
It's,
this?
it's a tough conversation to define what's an RPG.
We'll have that
Oh, well,
conversation.
I mean, we've had that conversation a couple times on the air, I think, but it's interesting to me, but we probably shouldn't go there.
We'll have this conversation like outside of this. We'll find a time.
We'll put it onto the message forum and let people have at it.
Yeah.
I
What were you
would
gonna
kind
say,
of like
Matt?
to know. No, well, now I'm a little bit curious. Maybe I shouldn't be. How about we let you kind of state your case, and then we don't argue about it? Why don't you think Pokemon? Why do you think it's not an RPG? Or is that the argument you're making?
I mean, I'm sort of stance neutral. I mean, I don't personally call it an RPG, but RP Gamer covers it, and I see exactly why they do.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, to me, I don't know. To me, Pokemon is a genre on its own. You have Pokemon and Pokemon-like games, and you have so many of them. It's like how Monster Hunter has become its own genre. You
Yeah.
have Monster Hunter, and then you have all of these Monster Hunter-like games that,
Well, and
it's sort of spawned its own genre now.
Yeah, and it's sort of and then at some point someone has to go back and codify it, kind of like how first-person shooters used to be called Doom clones, and then we started calling them first-person shooters because someone just or like roguelikes. People are trying to not call them roguelikes and calling them procedural death labyrinths because
Matthew.
Boss.
Sorry, we all said something at the same time. What was that?
Oh no, I called Voss out, and then he called me out at the exact same time.
Yeah, that wasn't planned. That wasn't planned at all. That was a good moment, though. I'm glad that you and I were here to share that moment together, Matthew.
That was beautiful.
I feel like we're closer human beings now.
I feel like the only reason that you don't like calling it that is just out of pure defiance. But
No,
whatever.
No, I can tell you why I don't want to call it that because I think it's a stupid name.
PDL, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well,
I don't think it's descriptive enough.
Well, I feel like it's just a mouthful, and I'm fine with changing roguelike, calling the genre something else, but procedural death labyrinth is just a little too wordy.
Well, and it sort of feels like Blizzard doesn't want to call Heroes of the Storm
A MOBA.
a MOBA
Yeah. I don't
because reasons.
I don't find genre-fying, I guess. That's not really a word, but you know what I mean. Like,
Oh yeah, totally.
I don't think things need to fit in little boxes.
Right,
Well, this
and
is a
because
rope, like
this
this
is
is an RPG.
this is sort of an interesting conversation that we've been having, partly on Twitter and partly on the RPG Cast and partly other places. Is the game that's can a game that's developed in the West be called a JRPG?
Yeah.
Because we're starting to have things like Dragon Fantasy and Cosmic Star Heroine and these amazing indie developed titles that are clearly in the JRPG genre. They're just not made in Japan.
Yeah.
Well, and that's going across other sectors too. Like, why can't we call Avatar: The Last Airbender an anime? It's clearly inspired by anime. It's clearly in the style of an anime, but since it's not made in Japan, it's a cartoon.
Right.
Yeah, so
and
how,
it's like
how do you...
Dark Souls is a Western style RPG.
Yes.
But people like completely lose their minds when you call it a Western RPG. Oh, it's not a Western RPG.
Yeah.
It was developed in Japan. Fist down on the desk.
Yeah,
It's not a WRPG.
it just gets
It's
to the point
yeah,
where, like,
except
if it
is.
becomes a broader genre, like, yeah, something that was... I mean, it makes sense to call, like... to call certain styles of movies, games, whatever, like by their original region. But then if you take it out of the region and someone tries to make it, make something inspired by that, then, like, yeah, do we come up with another name? Like, I mean, yeah, I'm totally fine personally with just saying, like, JRPGs are a certain style of RPG. But if you don't call them JRPGs, then what do we call them? Like turn-based, sort of like fantasy opera RPGs. Like, I don't know.
See,
like, I kind
I've
of like
always
that
found
term,
that-
fantasy opera, but I mean that's...
I've always found the distinction Western and Japanese. Why can't they just be RPGs?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just watched a spectacular failure in Kerbal Space RPG.
Oh, is your husband playing?
I'm not sure if he's playing or if he's watching a video.
I'm watching a video.
He's watching a video. But it was spectacular. Or Kerbal Space Program, I should say, not Kerbal Space RPG.
Yeah,
Gosh, now RPGs are on my mind.
as they are on all of our minds.
We are all RPG players here.
Well, so
For sure.
so let's take a little survey. Like, what would we call JRPGs if we don't call them JRPGs? Like, so Dragon Fantasy, old school Final Fantasy, like anything with top down overworld. You go into dungeons, you go into towns, you have a party of characters. It's like maybe you have classes or maybe you don't.
Ultimate, tentacle challenge, monster tentacle challenge, or something like that.
That's what you want to call them?
Monster Tentacle Challenge?
Yeah.
Why?
Just to perpetuate things.
Oh, okay. Matthew and the needlessly long, non-descriptive explanations of game types.
Someday I'm going to have to tell you guys the story about how I won a British parliamentary debate with tentacle rape.
Oh no.
You will have to tell that story. To your question, though, Baker, I just call that an RPG.
Yeah, it's so tough because, I mean, some people have proposed the idea that JRPGs could be reclaimed as classic RPGs. And it's like, except Western RPGs were being developed at the same time as classic JRPGs were.
Prior
I
to
mean,
even.
yeah. I mean, so...
Well, because, the JRPG formula came from Wizardry, which sort of
Wizardry.
came from D&D. So,
Right.
like... Yeah, so I mean, like, if you're going to call anything a classic RPG, like, you probably... Like, the only thing I feel like that could claim that title is D&D.
Right.
So...
Yeah.
Because
D&D Second Ed can claim that title.
Well, and the irony is a lot of the D&D games a lot of console PC D&D games now, a lot of those style of games are being made in Japan.
Yeah.
They're not even Western developed anymore, even though they're Western style games.
And I think a lot of, like, the division between, say, JRPG and Western RPG, I think there are certain gameplay elements that are similar, but I think it's more the story and the tone and the world that actually seem to typify it a little bit more.
And that's the thing that I think makes it so hard to pin down, because it's like I think we can definitively say Final Fantasy VI is a JRPG and Skyrim is a Western RPG. But tell me the difference between those two games.
I think I could do that.
Well, so Final Fantasy VI and Skyrim, you said?
Right. And I mean, I know I'm not using fair equivalents.
Mm-hmm. Well,
You're-
let's take
not.
out the real-time versus turn-based for a second. Like, let's ignore that because I feel like real-time RPGs and turn-based RPGs, that's kind of like another discussion. But, I think at that point, well, and I guess Skyrim, I mean, is more single-player too, but like, a lot of it would come down to like, to what degree do you customize your players versus them being preset and create your own story in Skyrim versus the story being preset in Final Fantasy VI? And that's kind of why I would say JRPGs are really more like fantasy operas, sort of like, saying like certain sci-fi things are space operas, because there is this like grandiose kind of arc that has like this high degree of drama to it, whereas Skyrim is kind of more about like me and my unique experience and me telling a story to myself and that sort of thing, which is
I don't
more
agree.
of a. You don't agree with that statement?
I don't agree with that statement.
So what's your rebuttal?
Skyrim, there's options, which I would say is maybe different from a JRPG to an extent. There are JRPGs now that have more options, but Skyrim, it's not really it's a personal experience because it's open world, but the storyline itself is the character that you're playing isn't you. It's just a silent protagonist. It's like Dragon Age. Dragon Age would probably be another good example. Like, you have options within the story, but at the end of the day, it's not you playing your own character.
Well, but that's true of Final Fantasy as well, right? But I would say Skyrim,
Right,
it's
that's
more
why
your character than in Final Fantasy.
That's why I'm disagreeing with the assessment that's what differs. I don't think they differ in the sense that you're not generally telling your own story. I think both. I think both of them are fairly set characters.
Yes and no. I mean, I guess you're a dragonborn no matter what you do in Skyrim.
And the only things that exist outside of, I mean, as long as you if you only play the storyline, you only have certain choices to make. It's all the extra stuff that lies outside of it, which I don't think is part of an RPG. I don't think open worldness in an RPG. I think those are two different genres that are overlapping when it comes to Skyrim.
Well, but I think if we go back kind of in history, like Western RPGs have tended to be way more open world or tried to achieve that. Like that's, D&D was open world, to some degree, like where the characters can say, or like the players can say, like, I want to do this, and then the DM determines like what happens. But so it's, your choices are way more open. And I think that Western games in general, and maybe specifically Western RPGs, have tried to make things more open, whereas JRPGs have tried to kind of close things down.
Okay, I can agree with that.
Yeah,
I think that, yeah, I see where you're coming from now. I also think another difference in JRPGs to RPGs, Western RPGs, is more of a reliance on puzzles in JRPGs. Whereas Western RPGs, it's mostly combat.
I don't know if that's true necessarily either, though.
No?
Pause, you seem
No.
very, very quiet. Did we just stumble into territory that you've retread too many times?
No, I'm letting people have their say.
Well, what would, what's your take on it?
For me, it's just about the feel of the game.
Just a vibe
And
kind
that
of
is
thing?
so nebulous that it is so difficult to nail down.
Well, let me. Maybe I'll go with that actually, because there's like a lot of cultural things you sort of notice that are just very, like they're very like Japanese, like certain like cultural references to either like whatever gods show up or whatever, like even like the types of creatures that show up, like those things are always like pretty consistent, I guess.
Well, absolutely, aesthetics is definitely a major part of what makes one and the other the other. I don't think that's anything groundbreaking, right?
But it's interesting that we're saying that, and yet the original Final Fantasy was based very, very strongly on D&D.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I mean, it's
Even like the
more
world
like
and everything
Western
was
in general.
yeah. I mean, actually, like if you, it is like a Japanese take on Western culture. Like I feel like as time has gone on, JRPGs have become more Japanese, or like they still kind of have that root of like the swords and sorcery, kind of more like Western, like medieval types of like swords and armor and things like that. But they've gotten like way more Japanese, way more anime, way more like Japanese history influenced. But
Anime itself is also influenced, or majorly influenced by the West.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking, like, if you go back to the original Final Fantasy, which is kind of most people's, like, if you went to the average person who knows a little bit about games and we're like, what's the first Japanese RPG? Final Fantasy is what's gonna spring to mind, even though that isn't probably really true. I don't know off the top of my head what was,
true.
yeah. But
I mean, even in WRPGs, wasn't Dragon Quest first?
I thought Dragon Quest came after Final Fantasy. But yeah, they were probably kind of around the same time. I'm trying to remember now, but anyway. But just
Dragon
like, well,
Quest came
both of
out
those are very Western in the type of character you are. Like, your fighter, your swordsman. Like those, like it seemed, and the king looks like a Western. Like a king from England sitting on a throne with a crown. Like it doesn't look like samurai era Japan or something like that, right? I mean, you only started seeing more and more of that in the Final Fantasy was coming out in the 80s. Like, I think it took until the 2000s before you really started seeing a lot more just like strictly like these characters have katanas rather than being knights with straight swords.
Maybe
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
stories than like the way that they approach the story. It's more like, I guess it's on a track, but you don't notice that it's on a track.
Sure.
So again, kind of like going back to how open is the game, like to what degree can you
Yeah.
define your character or your story. And I think that in general, Japanese RPGs tend to be way lighter in tone than Western RPGs.
I don't agree with that.
Yeah, me neither.
I'm gonna not agree with that one.
Well, at least if you go back to, well, okay, so like, I guess name a Western RPG that you feel like is much lighter in tone than the average JRPG.
I'm not prepared to answer that just because I don't play that many Western RPGs.
I mean, but I'm talking about like, maybe it's. It would take me some research to like make a list, but I think even like the darkest Final Fantasy is going to be lighter than your average Western RPG.
The thing is, Baker, RPGs aren't that big in the West, and they are bigger. They're bigger in the East. So there are more RPGs to pull from on the JRPG side than there are on the Western RPG side. First of all. Second of all, I wouldn't really put most Western RPGs up to Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy has its own set of tone, and I wouldn't even say that all Final Fantasies have a light tone. Final Fantasy X, for instance, has a pretty bleak tone.
Final Fantasy X is the world is completely screwed. Everybody's gonna die sooner rather than later. And by the way, we are all going to sacrifice ourselves.
But I think like saying that the story, like that the plot is dark, is different than saying that the tone is dark. Like, I think,
Yeah.
so regardless of like where the story is going, like the world's going to end. Yeah, I mean, a lot of games have that, but I think the tone of Final Fantasy X, in spite of that, is actually very like, look at the character designs.
It's
like,
definitely brighter.
They're
The
playing
laughing scene in Final
blitzball, like.
Fantasy X.
Oh no, can we please forget the laughter scene? No.
Would you say Final Fantasy Tactics has a dark tone and a dark story? I would.
Yes,
Even though
that
it
is
has very
that
brightly
has a,
colored art.
it does have
ogre. That's the thing. I love Ogre Battle for that dichotomy as well, because I've played the living crap out of Ogre Battle for the Super Nintendo and Ogre Battle 64, and both of those games are drawn in a very bright fashion. It's all light colors. It's vivacious, and the colors all pop. But the story is like unbelievably oppressive.
And I would say Persona 3 and 4 especially are pretty dark and bleak storylines. And they're very brightly colored. And especially the musical tracks in 4 are incredibly bright and cheery. So
every day's great at your Juness.
So another example of something that's like dark, but like it looks happier than what it actually is like, I mean, like, this is like really easy, but like the NES, like Earthbound, or Mother.
Yeah,
like,
the Mother series.
It's
absolutely.
way darker than what it actually is, you know.
Yeah.
Than what it appears to be. I mean.
So I mean, we can pull so many JRPGs. How many Western RPGs can we think of? The Dragon Age series is pretty high profile.
It's pretty dark.
It's
well, I mean,
pretty,
any of the
like
any of the D&D inspired, like Icewind Dale, Baldur's Gate.
I don't think Baldur's Gate is a dark storyline.
And
I think the game is dark in tone.
Yeah, well, and that's why I was saying tone rather than story. I think is like, my statement was that JRPGs have a lighter tone in general than Western RPGs, whether or not the plot is dark or light. Like the tone tends to be lighter.
Like how they take themselves seriously, or
I mean, I think that's
what?
no. Like when I say yes, I think what Matt was saying about like how seriously are you supposed to take it as a viewer? It seems like most Japanese media is there tends to be more humor. I think that's changing in Western culture to some degree, but I think there tends to be more humor in like your average like Japanese media piece of media. Like what am I like whether it's anime or games or whatever. I think the Western RPGs, like the designer wants you to take the world very seriously, like Lord of the Rings, just on average. Like you're meant to kind of believe this world, where I feel like Japanese games and media in general, like they don't want you to believe the world so much and have the same kind of immersion. It's more of a, like you're watching a play, is kind of the vibe that I have tended to get. And there are obviously exceptions, like, Dark Souls is like an exception to the rule, but we did kind of say like the Dark Souls series is more Western influenced.
I can agree with that on games. I won't agree with that on anime and manga. I don't think that translates to that. I don't think it stretches to that.
Yeah, I can agree to that.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that an attempt to categorize like this really only exists in the video game world, and I think that it's interesting that.
No way, it exists in literature and movies too.
Yeah, that's true.
It exists
true.
It exists in every art form.
I think that the way that people attempt to box RPGs into one genre or another is sort of fascinating.
I agree. I'm not pro classification.
So, Anne, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed you guys had an article about Final Fantasy 15 on that demo, and I hadn't gotten to play it, but I watched like the playthroughs and stuff of it.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at it, it doesn't quite feel the way I expect like an RPG or even like a Final Fantasy to feel.
Yeah, I think that I absolutely agree with you. I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Final Fantasy 15 was not intended to originally be a mainline Final Fantasy game.
Right, yeah, right.
And I think partly because of that, and partly because of the success of a lot of these sort of action-oriented RPGs, like Monster Hunter, that we see that influence now coming into Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy, it's interesting. A lot of people think that Final Fantasy shaped the RPG genre, but I've always found, watching sort of the trends of the games around it, that Final Fantasy was shaped by the games that it was parallel to.
I can agree to that for sure.
And so, I don't know, it's been fascinating for me to watch Final Fantasy grow as a series. And I sort of got out of Final Fantasy, air quote, out of Final Fantasy after 11. Not something that I deliberately did. It was like, oh, I'm sick of Final Fantasy. Screw that series. It was one of those things that 12 came out, and I was still a reviewer for RP Gamer, and I had like 16 billion other titles to work on. The review went to someone else. I played Revenant Wings, which is the Final Fantasy 12 sequel on DS. Many, many years before I actually played Final Fantasy 12, because I played Final Fantasy 12 last year.
I disliked it intensely.
And I still haven't played any of the 13 games. I've played some of 14, and I've played
You played some of 13.
Have I played some of 13?
Yeah.
I apparently have played some of 13.
Boss, I think we gave
I'm
up.
so sorry.
No, I don't think I got to the last boss. Oh wait, that's the one with lightning.
Yeah.
Okay, I have played some of 13. But I have no idea where I am in the game. I would probably have to restart it to get back to it. So... I mean, there's just so many good RPGs that come out that appeal to me that I feel no need, pressure, or desire to be loyal to a single series.
Yeah.
Which is funny because, of course, when I first started writing about RPGs, I mean, I joined RP Gamer in 2000. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that was back in the day where it was like we had a fan fiction section and we had a music section, because there might have been like maybe a dozen or two RPGs that came out in the entire year, other than some really garbage ones that no one wanted to talk about. So, but I mean, now it's like there's an RPG that comes out every week, usually more than one.
Yeah, it's a pretty saturated market.
I mean, there could be 250 or more RPGs that come out in a year. And so we have such a... Instead of having a really narrow pool that we had to find the depth in, now we have such a massive pool that the depth of the individual games almost feels irrelevant, but clearly isn't.
So... But did you actually play it though, like the game?
15?
Yeah.
No, I watched Chris play it, which was enough to entertain me.
Okay.
I like action-y RPGs, and so I'm pretty stoked for this. I mean, I like Record Keeper and I like the ATB, and that feels very nostalgic and warm to my heart. But at the same time, I am totally down for jumping in front of the console and smashing buttons a lot.
So, something I'm really worried about as far as like storytelling is, well, I can't remember his name. He's the one. Who's the? Is it Nomura or?
You're probably thinking of Nomura.
Oh.
Yeah. So like, something I'm starting to like maybe accept is the fact that like this series is kind of like kid shows, really, in the fact that like you have like this nostalgia factor of like this is what it was like when I was a kid and like I really liked it, but when you go back you're like, oh, why did I even like this? I kind of feel like it's sort of in the same vein, like it's like this is for like teenage boys, like it's not really to my taste anymore, like I've kind of grown out of that, and that the series is very much stayed that way, and I guess it's just taken me a while to figure that out, I guess. Like that, like it's not always going to appeal to me. I don't know if that makes sense to anyone else.
It does. And I kind of wish that... How do I say this without being condescending? There is part of the video game fandom that never grew out of the idea that you have to be loyal to a specific company or genre or system.
Sure.
And that just makes me sad.
Oh, blind loyalty is never good, no matter what.
Yeah, I think I can agree to that, because it's because we like build up these like expectations, I think, and like it keeps pleasing you, like, and then you're like a year later and it's still great for you, and then like you sort of you're kind of like taught to expect to be pleased with something that like isn't necessarily going to appeal to you, like when you're like more mature and you have a lot more perspectives and you have a lot more experience with different types of genres and games and things like that. So yeah, like I can agree to that. And I think it's partially because like a lot of companies are sort of pulling from the nostalgia a bit.
Yes.
If that makes any sense.
And yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a concern that I see with some of the major long-standing series. I see it not as much with Dragon Quest, but I mean like Final Fantasy and Bokujo Monogatari and some of the Shin Megami Tensei stuff is there's some stuff that's better than others in the series, but I feel like we have some of these long-standing series that came out of Japan that the audience that played them grew up, but I'm not sure the games ever did.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like how kids who like grew up with like SpongeBob are like when they look back at it and they're like, what the heck is this? But like it hasn't necessarily changed that much, I guess. Or maybe that's not a good example.
And it's fascinating because I mean I'm a child of the 80s. And I went back and I was like, I had such good memories of some of these cartoons as a kid. Let's go back and watch the original OG Transformers. Yeah. And in like the 1 hour premiere episode, there is something like 70 scene changes in a 55-minute episode. And I'm sitting there going, how did I watch this as a child? It's so spastic.
It was designed for your childish ADD. Like it took that into account.
I was going to say that.
So, and I mean, I think now as an adult gamer, I want more games that appeal to me as an adult. And I find that the genre is getting there, but I wish there was more selection.
Well, and it's kind of interesting that I don't think, say, Dragon Quest should ever grow up in the sense that we're talking. Like, I think it has always been designed to have this like all ages appeal. Whereas Final Fantasy has always seemed like a little more like we wanted it to grow up. Like we felt like it was mature when we were younger and kind of wanted it to become more mature as we did. Where I think, yeah, Dragon Quest, like I kind of don't want it to suddenly become more gritty and dark.
Right.
And I'm sure I think things can grow with the times, like it grow as culture just in general matures or kind of keep up with culture and the times, but don't necessarily have to like hit an older audience, if that makes sense. Like I think there's a difference between maturity, like there are different senses of maturity.
I think a big problem is that a lot of video game companies think that pandering to the older base means making things dark and gritty. I think that's a big conflation. I actually think it's a little condescending and pessimistic of the game companies to think that way. Like so, it's more adult when you know everything's gray and people are miserable.
And I think maybe that's what we see as a result coming from Final Fantasy 15. It's like we have to grow this game up. So we're not gonna have younger protagonists. We're gonna have a number of older gentlemen, and it's going to be the dude bro go to the Burger King drive-in party.
But that does seem that actually seems younger to me. Like I mean, it doesn't seem like a bunch of kids on an adventure, but it seems like I mean, it's like the wrong kind of. Well, I mean, here, like you know, I'm however many, like almost 10 years out of college, but it seems like it's, you know, it still seems young to me. Because it's like these what feels like a college age experience.
Yeah, it's like what will make people think it's more mature? Oh, frat party. Okay.
That's totally what it is. Oh my god.
I'm not saying they hit the nail on the head. I'm saying that this feels like their attempt to do so.
That's
Yeah.
it's totally their attempt to do so. It's just
And interestingly, I would not have recognized that. Because just like driving around in your car, like on the countryside, like having this kind of, like summer vacation romp, like that's what it feels like. Where, like, I mean, medieval, like, well, I shouldn't say medieval, but like. What was pointed out to me by Renee, who is one of our freelancers, has done a lot of writing on the game, is that the average age of a character in a fantasy book is typically younger than if you were writing like a modern day novel. Like you have to kind of age it back by like 10 to 15% because people just like grew up faster in like even like 50, 100 years ago, like people had to grow up faster. And especially in medieval times, like by the time you were 16, you were, you had to be an adult or you weren't going to survive kind of thing. And so I think if you kind of take it in that perspective, games like Final Fantasy 12 that kind of have this, more like high mid, I mean, there's sci-fi and stuff in it too, but like are like I view it as if it's set in a time like hundreds of years ago, regardless of the level of technology. It's kind of that, it feels like that type of culture to me, or is designed on that type of culture. And so I expect by the time someone's 16, like they're having to fend for themselves. And so I view those actually like characters that are younger in terms of age going on this adventure to be like, I go in with an anticipation for them to have like a more adult lifestyle than these dudes driving around in their Cadillac, killing monsters on summer vacation. Is that sort of making sense? Like I feel like it's a difficult thing to express for me right in this moment, but
So I think it's also something else with the series in general is they kind of been fluctuating between like what their story is as far as like its maturity and its storytelling style, because the thing is, if I look at like 5 and I see like something it's a little bit more lighthearted. Well, wait, gosh, I always get 4 and 5 mixed up. Which one was is it Cecile or Cecil? I've never actually known how you pronounce his name.
We actually had a conversation about this on the RPG cast. We think Cecil because his son is Cecil.
See, that's what I thought it was Cecil.
And that's,
but like,
I believe you're talking about 4, because 5 is
4.
Bart's.
Okay.
5 is with Butts.
Yeah, Butts. I was about to say that. I played very little of it, but what was he called? Bart's or something like that in the American version?
Yeah, so he was Butts in the fan translations.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so like we get to Cecil's stories or Cecile's story. God.
Just say Cecil.
Cecil. Okay. His story is like sort of like dark and gritty, and like everyone's supposedly dying and stuff like that. So it's like when you get into that one, you feel like it's really dark. And the next one, it's like it feels more lighthearted, I guess. Like I didn't really take it very seriously.
When you say next one, what do you mean? 5?
Yeah, like, and I didn't even finish it because I sort of couldn't take it very seriously. Like I didn't even get to the second half. And then when I got to 6, which was like my personal favorite one, like it has this like nice balance between like being like dark and then also not taking itself seriously. And then you get to 7, which is like really like almost slightly uncomfortably dark in some areas. And then you get to 8, which is like coming back to, I guess, what you would consider something like with 6 being like its story tone. And the 9, it gets really like lighthearted, but also dark at the same time. But it's like not dark unless you're actually paying attention. And then 10 is, I don't know how do you put it, because we weren't really sure how to, I guess, quantify like its tone. I don't know what were you guys saying about that?
10?
Yeah.
10's pretty dark, but it's kind of more along the lines of 9, where it's like, are you paying attention? Then it's really dark. If not, then everything's bright and tropical and everyone's happy.
And then you get to, I'm not even going to say 11 because I didn't even play 11, but like you get to 12.
11 was an MMO, so.
Yeah, so that's partially why I didn't even get a chance to play it. But like 12 was
unmitigatedly bad.
No. It was serious. It was just really serious and political. Like there wasn't anything that was like lighthearted. I'm Bosch von Braun.
Well, that was written by the same person who created the Final Fantasy Tactics world, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's an evil.
Yeah,
yeah,
and
it's
that
the
was
same universe.
absolutely political and religious.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I am one of those few people that love the garbage old translation because
Of
the
which
idea
one?
for Final Fantasy Tactics.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, I got a good feeling. No, but I mean, the problem is that when they retranslated it, they lost some of the very terse statements that were like crazy good writing. It was like blame yourself or God, and it's like that's a pretty profound statement.
Yeah.
What was the translation?
Tis. Oh gosh, so they really old English it up in the new thing.
Yeah, they do.
And so it's like, tis your birth or tis your birthright, that has put you in this place.
Mm-hmm.
So, it doesn't. And yeah, okay, blame
really
yourself
say
or
the same
God
thing.
makes absolutely zero sense. And I totally understand why they changed it, but they lost the meaning of it. And I think that's the thing that bothered me.
So going back on the track of what I was saying a second ago is,
We've
no,
got
I'm not. I'm
spider
totally
web.
not. I was trying to remember where we were a second ago for which number.
Well, you're in a different state than Pause, and Pause is in a different state than me.
We're all in a different state.
You and Baker aren't in a different state.
Are you talking about quantum mechanics now?
Can we not do this?
It's hitting 5 o'clock, and we're all getting tired. 2-hour stream, guys. Our audience is all asleep.
So we get to 13, and then it's sort of like soap opera, I guess.
I don't even know. I didn't
Fantasy
even
opera, my term that I coined.
Pause. Did you play this?
13?
Yeah,
A little.
You said, okay. Did you notice it was very drama, the character
it has, yes. And I think that's the thing that sort of fascinated me is 13 sort of feels like we are moving from one moment of drama to the next. And you get a little bit of rest between the moments of drama, and it's cool because you get some sort of you get some insight into what's going on in the world when there isn't drama.
I'm hearing laughter.
Yeah,
I think that's
my
Kerbal
husband
Space
is
Program
watching
again.
Unprofessional Friday.
Oh, okay. I thought he was laughing at you about defending Final Fantasy 13.
No, I'm not defending it.
I think maybe people should laugh at you
Absolutely
about
the
that.
last thing that I'm going to do is defend Final Fantasy 13. No, he's laughing his butt off because there's a mod in Grand Theft Auto 5 that lets you shoot cars out of a gun.
That's amazing.
Oh, and he's also morphed himself into a hawk on top of that.
One of the best new mods, the Hulk mod, where you can just kick cars at
And send them
escape-
absolutely flying. Yeah.
escape velocity speeds, and I saw someone get as many cops as they could, and they just kind of sauntered out to a car and hit it. Every cop just goes zipping into the air. It was pretty
That's
good.
amazing.
It's hilarious. I haven't played any of the Grand Theft Auto games, but I like watching some of the gameplay.
Yeah, I'm not personally interested in the Grand Theft Auto series. I can see why it is massively appealing, though.
I think it appeals to the people who think games are escapism.
Yeah.
I don't particularly fall into that camp, so they don't appeal to me.
So, back to what I was actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm
God.
very sorry.
Basically, the point is, I was saying that, I don't think we as a consumer, know what we're supposed to be expecting from Square Enix anymore.
And of course, the dilemma as the game developer is you get an unbelievable amount of feedback, and then you have to process that feedback.
Yeah.
And the problem is I'm a community manager. I have some companies that it's I look at their Facebook page and we get feedback from a game. And I will get 6 people that'll be I hate this particular aspect of the game. Never put it in a game again. And I will get 6 more people that were my favorite part of the game was that aspect. Can you please include it in the next game?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, I have an equal number of people telling me that this is a beloved thing and I should absolutely make sure it's included in the next game.
Mm-hmm.
And I have an equal number of people that are saying, this is trash. It sucks. Don't ever do it again.
The problem is you can't please all the people all the time, and when you become an institution,
But people think you can.
right? The issue is that when you have a big enough fan base, everyone wants you to appeal to them without really considering the fact that they
Honestly,
want
the size of the fan base, I think, is less relevant to how vocal the fan base is.
probably.
Because, I mean, there are some games I know that I have helped people put out, and the amount of games they sell through are literally in the millions, and no one ever talks about the game.
Yeah,
So,
it's true. I mean, there's no avoiding. I mean, I guess controversy breeds controversy. So
yes.
So if a game company makes a game that's controversial, you're more likely to have firebrands in the community that are just going to wait for another controversy to pounce in on it. And
So we need to put something really controversial in Delver's Drop.
I have some suggestions.
Permadeath.
Oh, don't even get me started on permadeath. Baker doesn't want to hear it anymore, I'm sure.
We can talk about it. It's fine. I mean, we are trying to strike a balance of like perma-ish death with some permanence.
Okay,
I mean,
well, I'll
you can
I'll
delete your save file all the time if you want to. I mean, you can. That's my mod. My pro tip: mod for Delver's Drop. Delete your save file. It's the permadeath mod.
I'm just gonna stick
I agree.
my flag in the sand here and say that if you don't want your save file deleted, you're playing the game wrong. How's that? That's my mod.
Well, here's my thing about the
harsher on it.
permadeath thing.
Oh yeah, sure, go ahead.
So, any of the games that have permadeath in them, I have a really hard time falling in love with any of the characters because like I can't attach like any of my personalities to those characters, anything like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
No, I'm the exact opposite.
Oh no, that's exactly why I don't play hardcore in Diablo.
I think there's a difference between Diablo and a roguelike when it comes to permadeath. I don't advocate permadeath in games like Diablo or Torchlight. I do when it comes to games that are like The Binding of Isaac.
right, because the characters aren't like, I mean, in the Binding of Isaac, like your characters aren't really any different, and there's nothing like about them that makes you actually attach to them to begin with.
Well, yeah. Although I'm quite attached to. I mean, I'm attached to the gameplay style that the character has, not the character itself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I don't advocate permadeath in games like Diablo. But I guess
Which
I
is
just
interesting that like Diablo has always had a permadeath option, right? I mean, it was basically like a real time take on roguelikes. It was kind of
Yes.
how it originated.
Yeah. But I'm with Matt in the sense that when it comes to games like Diablo or Torchlight, yeah, I don't want to lose my character, mostly because I find that the games are really set on grinding.
Yeah, loot
And I don't want to
collection.
just have to keep. Yeah, I don't want to have to keep grinding and grinding and grinding. So I guess the issue is I don't see Delver's Drop as a Diablo game. I see Delver's Drop as a Binding of Isaac or Teleglitch game.
Oh no.
So, and that's simply not
I mean,
necessarily the reality.
Which I think what you were kind of getting at is maybe a way to differentiate is like, well, so let's forget the whole like roguelike term and Diablo-like and whatever else we want to call it, is that you're interested in games of survival where it's less about like I'm going to build my epic character up with all this loot. Like that's kind of the Diablo style, like, you know, a collection-a-thon. And you're interested in like I'm thrown in a difficult world, I have to survive, and I die, and then I start over. And you know, like we said, Delver's Drop is trying to hit the sweet point in the middle. But yeah, I mean, there's no gear reflected on your characters in Delver's Drop. We're not designing for this like weapon grind where the point of the like you're just slogging through waves of enemies in order to I mean, I guess like sometimes I play Diablo 3 a bit, and not a ton, but enough that I start questioning like, so why am I doing this? Like, what am I actually playing for? Like, progress the story? Not really. The story's not that great. Am I trying to get more gear? Kind of, but that gets boring. Like, am I trying to get more abilities? Maybe. Like, I start. That's where I start getting bored with Diablo.
Right. And I mean, I've played Dungeons and Dragons for 21 years now. So, I mean, I understand both sets. I understand wanting to have a character that I associate with because, you know, I've been playing, again, role-playing games for 21 years, and I can understand the mindset of, well, I am in this world to survive, and there's a point A beginning, point B ending, and the journey between those 2 points is the game itself, and if I die, well, no big loss, I just go back to point A. And I think it's more of a difference in medium. In things like D&D, it's a real-world thing, which actually takes a lot of time. In a video game, I'm not so concerned with that. I especially as I get older, I want a game where I can pick up, play an hour, and have a full run, where I have all of my achievements in one run, and I can walk away. I don't have to worry about the game, and then I can come back and do another 1 hour of the game and have the same experience, but in a different way. Because each run will be different. Which is
so really kind of what you're saying is you identify more, maybe not with the characters, but identify more with the game due to the kind of time investment, like the way you're investing time. And the fact that you can experience that kind of game in small little hour chunks, and therefore you're kind of like putting hundreds of hours into it over a span of a year, rather than sitting down like plowing through a 40-hour game and beating it in like a week.
Right, and I'm happy with either form. You know, I still like RPGs. I guess it's just my lifestyle has changed to a point where I'm capable of doing things in a more, and I think this is probably more normal. I think a lot of people are in this situation where, you know, they work a 9 to 5, they come home, they have an hour to do their own stuff, and then they have to make dinner, and then, you know, they get another hour maybe if they don't have kids, and then they get to go to bed.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, and I guess, yeah, I mean, you guys are trying to find the sweet spot, and that's one of the reasons why I like Delver's Drop so much. Because you guys are trying something that I don't really think anyone else has tried.
So, how do you think we've defined Western RPGs versus JRPGs?
A complete mess. A complete mess. How's this? We each have our own opinions on it, and that's not surprising at all.
Nope. I think that's very fair.
And
I think that's going to drive some people insane.
And none of us are wrong, and none of us are right, because nuance is a thing.
So, do you guys want to argue about it again next week? Is that what we're deciding?
Sure, we can argue about it next week. I'm happy to.
Because I mean, there are aspects of the JRPG genre that I think we haven't even touched yet, like
Bring 'em up.
Collection games, construction games, and stuff like. I bet you no one here has even played an Atelier game.
Hey, what?
Exactly.
I don't think I've ever heard of that. No.
Is this the game where you?
Oh no!
Okay. I did. Yeah, I did
Yeah.
mishear you. Well, because you pronounced it in the I'm sure correct French way. Here in Missouri, we
you
call
might have heard it Atelier.
Atelier.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm like, okay. Now I get, because I'm like, is this?
None of us play
you
this.
play
So-
a game with Nutella?
That sounds delicious.
Yeah, Atelier. Yeah. Yeah. I haven't played them, but I know of them. And it's so, since going to the Japanese culture, they're obsessed with those, which is weird because the French really never had a strong presence in Japan. It was mostly the Netherlands and the U.S. and Portugal that had a really strong presence in Japan. So it's just weird that they've picked up on the Atelier and really like that style of workshop, which it boggles. I don't understand how that culture convention transferred over to them.
No idea.
I'm a nerd. I like history, which is why I like EU4, which isn't an RPG.
Sorry, what was that? I missed that too. You like
Europa
what?
I like Europa Universalis 4.
Okay.
I have to ask you a question also, Baker, because I'm like really confused. So like, is that like, and I'm talking about the Elementalist, is that like a skirt made of like rocks or something?
Rocks, wood, whatever.
It's a
Natural
kilt made of
materials.
It's a kilt made of gravel. The gravel kilt.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really see it because he's got all these belts and things on. But yeah, I was just trying to
my
like
favorite
it.
thing.
I didn't really like the original kind of. It looked like strips of bark. I felt like something was like I'm trying to go for the same look, but a little more just disorganized looking.
I like it.
Which I feel like goes with this hat better. Just it makes everything look a little more cobbled together. But yeah, we should probably. We're at 5:30, so 2.5 hours. That's. I mean, I know the stream got broken up by OBS crashing multiple times, but we should probably call it a day.
Sure.
Oh, fine.
So thank you, Anna Marie, for coming on. We should have you again sometime soon. I don't know how free your schedule is, but
We'll see.
yeah.
With E3 coming up, I get very busy in May.
Yeah. Well, we can
talk
wait a
about
month
it.
or two and catch up again.
Yeah.
Do like a post E3 show.
Sure.
That'd be fun. You can tell me all about the news that I won't have time to read. No,
I can tell you about all the games that I regret not being able to play. Cool.
Sure, sounds good.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for giving us your time, and I feel like maybe you listened to us talk more than us asking you questions, which I feel like was
Oh, no, not
possibly
at
a little
all.
unfair, but.
Nah.
Well, and thank you also, Vasey, as always, for hosting and keeping us in line and.
Do I though? Is that what I do here? Is that my job?
Well, maybe you keep the commenters in line. I don't know how many people were we paying attention to the feed at all today? I definitely wasn't. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So thanks everyone for coming to the Pixelscopic live stream. I'm Vasey. You can follow me at 8:30 to Awesome on YouTube or on Twitch just at VASAE. Baker's
And,
supposed to say that he's a member of the Pixelscopic team. And that the
well,
game
and
is
we'll
still
let
in
Anna
development.
Marie give kind of last minute plugs for all of her places that she is active.
You can catch me on Twitter at amprivateer, PRIVITERE. Otherwise, you can check out rpgamer.com, RPGAMER, which is also our Twitter and our Facebook. And a lot of time, if it's not an automated post, it's usually me. So I don't know if I want to pimp any of my clients. That might be a conflict of interest.
I mean, you can tell us kind of. I mean, whatever is public knowledge. If you want to tell us what you're working on right now, like I don't care if you mean that kind of
scheduling
conflict of
E3
interest.
meetings for a couple different people. We'll see
Okay.
how things go.
Okay.
Tell them to come subscribe to me on the YouTubes.
So yeah.
Do that. So I think that.
So I guess the only last thing to say is this has been a stream for Delver's Drop, even though we talked about everything but Delver's Drop, maybe. But if anyone's interested in the game, wants to learn more, you can go to our forums. Did you say the forums already? Forums.pixelscopic.com.
No,
Or just delversdrop.com. You can buy the game, play it now if you want to. But I'm trying to convince people not to, at least for the moment, because I feel like the current version that's out there needs some love. So, is that it? Did we cover all the plugs?
I think so.
I think so.
Okay. Well, thank you all again,
Sure.
and thank you, viewers, and have a good weekend.